Good day, fans. We are here talking to the Blue Lunch podcaster. He's the resident Sheridan varsity sports expert, none other than Mr. Justin Smith. Good day, sir. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Okay, so let's get down to this. What is the future of sports celebrity? That's what we're basically going to talk about. But the first question I have is, what do you think is the relationship of the fans and the athletes right now in terms of social media? How is it strengthened specifically to the NHL?
Well, I think that it started a couple of years ago when they decided that they were going to have a drafting format for the AllStar Game. And I mean, the way the drafting format works is they allow fans to vote who they want to see using social media and through their website, NHL.com. You can actually vote for whoever you want, really. You could have players who maybe don't deserve to be on the All-Star team get voted in. And what ends up happening is, judging on the most votes, you get the team captains. Mm-hmm. And I think when it comes to fan interaction, those kind of things you'll probably be seeing in the future, for a lot more in the future, because the NHL, especially after the last lockout, needs to start mending the fences, so to speak. Yep. To kind of smooth things over for the fan base.
Mm-hmm. Can you cite other examples at the top of your head in terms of how social media has affected the relationship between fans and the league?
Yeah. Well, there's one particular incident where it directly affected a fan. It was during the playoffs. Vancouver was facing San Jose, and a fan who, for some reason, no one knows still, decided that she was going to go up to Ben Eager, who was in the penalty box at the time. He plays for San Jose, and she was going to flash him against the glass. Yeah. And the reason that's, first of all, it's affecting the athlete because she's trying to distract him clearly. There's no other reason to do it. Secondly, it affects the fan because now the fans are directly involved with the game in a physical way. And what was interesting, or what was, I don't know if you could say tragic, that she actually was in company seats when she did it, and then she was fired. All right. She was fired from her job for doing that because it was inappropriate, and that was the direct result of what she did. And I think that when it comes to the way fans interact with athletes, it's like another example is let me think here. In Philadelphia, for instance, they had what's his name? Anyways, lots of racial slurs for.
Yeah. Wasn't that Subban, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, for some reason, people of African American descent, there aren't very many in the NHL, but there are a few, and his name is escaping my head right now, but he plays for Philadelphia, and the fans at one game were making racial slurs toward him, and they were loud, and he heard them on the ice. And anyways, he was he was upset, and he took to Twitter over it.
Right.
And he confronted it. Those kind of things, again, using Twitter to voice his displeasure with the fans. They were his own fans.
Yeah.
So I'm sure some of them weren't his fans, but the fact that he went on Twitter and he said, like, I'm disappointed, I can't believe this is still happening in our league. And that's another example.
Do you think an athlete tweeting, an athlete going on Facebook, do you think overall, does that help or hurt the athlete-fan relationship?
I think it helps because there are a lot of examples of, like Paul Bissonnette. He's a perfect example of someone who took to Twitter and it exploded. And now he's more popular than he ever was. He used to play for the Phoenix Coyotes, and nobody knew him. But now, ever since he joined Twitter, he is outspoken, in a good way though, not in a rude way or a controversial way. And he jokes, and he goes on sports talk shows now as his Twitter handle. He doesn't even use his first name, Paul. He uses Bissonnette. That's his Twitter name. So what ends up happening is that you almost brand yourself, you brand yourself with using social media as a player.
Yeah.
And in doing so, the fans kind of relate to you because they're on Twitter too. See, the fans aren't on the ice with the player, but when the player goes on Twitter, and then he embraces it, the average fan, they become connected.
As a fan, would you give your support to a player who is who's active in social media, or would you? No, let me rephrase that. Would you give your support, or would you support an athlete who's in social media, but who's not winning exactly, or somebody who's winning?
Oh, of course.
Or not so much into Twitter or Facebook. What's your take on that?
Well, I think there's lots of players. I mean, even Paul Bissonnette, the player I just talked about, really, I mean, he hasn't won anything, but he has his popularity essentially from being on Twitter. I mean, he was on the Phoenix Coyotes. Not many people know who plays for the Phoenix Coyotes. Unfortunately, that's the reality of it. Yeah. But he made it an identity for himself, and people know him. People love him for that because he's funny when he's on Twitter.
Right.
Another example of people on Twitter, hockey players on Twitter, who make names and who you support, who aren't necessarily have never won the Stanley Cup or anything like that. Joffrey Lupul of the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's very active on Twitter. He talks to his fans on a personal level all the time. And people, they love him for that. I mean, he can produce on the ice, but he hasn't done anything. He's in my opinion, he's more injury prone than a lot of other players in the league. Yep. People would doubt him on any other team, but what ends up happening is because of his Twitter handle, which is JLupul,
So why do you think fans are latching on to people or to athletes who are not proven winners? Well, what do you think? Well, what's your theory on that?
I think it's because the more relatable athletes become using social media, the more connected the fans feel they are to them. Right. They feel like they're just average Joes when they're on Twitter. You know? Like they're talking to them like they're not a fan. They're talking to them like they're someone on the street that they're just passing by.
Right. And okay, we'll segue a bit to another aspect of social media, which is social media and sports, which is the way sports writing or the way sports reporting is done. What are your general thoughts on that? What do you think? Why is it different now compared to like 5 or 7 years ago before this whole social media boom happened?
Well, you have to be careful now. A perfect example of someone who just didn't think before they tweeted was Damien Cox. I respect him fully. I think he's a great journalist. Unfortunately, there was one instance where former deceased Leaf coach Pat Burns, he had been suffering from cancer for a while, and Mr. Cox was outside of, I believe, the Leafs dressing room, and he caught wind. Someone had mentioned Pat Burns in a conversation, and that he had heard that he had passed. So, Damien Cox, wanting obviously to be, scooping everyone else, he just heard this and tweeted it. He said that Pat Burns has passed away, through Twitter, and what ended up happening, obviously, is that wasn't true. It was just a passing conversation. It didn't mean that he was, deceased at the time. he was actually alive still, and they were still treating him. So he kind of released a formal apology because the people at MLSE, Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, they weren't very happy
Yeah.
with Damien Cox. So, to answer your question, I think the way you're going to start seeing the media dealing with at least the NHL in general is they're probably going to be on a leash more now with using social media. I mean, with Twitter, it doesn't take that much to tweet news. On Twitter now, even, you see people tweeting news, but they're confirming that it's the right news before they're tweeting it out. And they even say, you can talk to any sports writer, any sports reporter, they'll say that if you need to think before you hit send or you hit the word tweet and then it goes out, if you need to think before you do that, then you shouldn't be tweeting it. Then you shouldn't be putting it out there. And that was good advice, and I think you're going to see that advice in the next few years. That's going to become prevalent in the reporting on in this sport specifically.
And now let's focus on the future of the sports celebrity. First, what do you think is the future of the fan-athlete relationship in terms of social media? What are we going to see in the future, like 7 years down the line? What do you see? What do you predict?
Well, if I had to guess, I would think, judging on how things are going even this year, with the lockout, there's social media. The use of social media is promoting the game, and I think, unfortunately, there's other sports that do it better than the NHL. So I think even in the next 5 years, you're going to see the NHL embracing social media. They're going to be not only this is using the AllStar Game draft as a sort of like a stepping stone.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see a lot more executive types of the NHL thinking that, let's use Twitter to promote said team or said player, and we'll go from there. Right now, the policy for the NHL is that you're not allowed to tweet 2 hours before a game, and even they have certain rules in place where you can't say anything, whether you're a coach or a player, if you're displeased 48 hours after something happens in a game.
Right.
So, will those things change? I think they will. I don't think you're going to see 2 hour bans before the game.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see players using...
Being allowed?
Oh, I think you're going to see players, if anything, to promote the game, being used... using social media during the game, maybe.
Yeah.
Because let's put it this way, if a player gets injured in the middle of a game and he tweets in the locker room okay, I'm fine, don't worry, how many people are going to pay attention?
Right.
Tons of people. So I think that's how it's going to change. I think you're going to see it, the NHL is going to come down, it's going to be more lenient on the way players can use it. Obviously, inappropriate tweeting or Facebooking or anything like what Tim Thomas did to the Boston Bruins. He
with the Barack Obama.
He
comment.
voiced his opinions on a Barack Obama, which was totally unforeseen. I mean, the Boston Bruins never saw that coming, and what happened? They got rid of Tim Thomas.
Yeah.
So again, I guess you're going to see at team's discretion if a player uses Facebook or Twitter or social media to abuse their right to be into social media, talk to the fans, you're going to see them punished accordingly.
And actually, to add to that, I agree with you. I agree with you that 7 years from now, I think these institutions, because right now we're still trying to figure out how powerful social media is. We don't understand yet its capacity to help or to boost a certain brand or to hurt it. I think 7 years from now, I think we're going to see social media as a gateway for fans and athletes and the teams and the leagues. It's going to be a gateway for them to really be closer, but there's a fine line where they're still finding out how to set those rules, set those parameters so that nobody gets to violate anything, or nobody gets to violate anybody's interests or anybody's privacy. Because one thing that I read about is like in college sports in the U.S. and NCAA, the barriers that they set, the bans that they set, is actually an affront to the First Amendment, which is freedom to say what you want, or freedom of speech. So I think down the line, if these leagues, if these teams can find out a way to come up with security measures, so that, say, you do something like, say, you tweet something inappropriate to an athlete, if the security measures are up or set up in such a way that they'll be able to track these people down, then as if I'm a star athlete, I'll be more comfortable mingling with you guys, because
Exactly.
I'm aware that if you do something stupid, you'll get caught, right? So that going forward, this the relationship will definitely be closer, will be better between the athletes and fans.
And I just want to add one more thing. I think if anything, social media in the NHL needs to be up to notch, because first of all, if they're thinking that they're going to have another lockout, like they've already had two in the last 10 or 11 years, social media is the only way you're going to be able to get fans, like whatever you do, promotions or
Right.
advertising.
Right.
Doing it through social media is the only way you're going to reach people. And like I said, I don't know if they're going to have another lockout, but lots of people hated it. And they need to start building more bridges with the fans now. And I think social media, especially in the next 8 years, because that's when the CBA ends, if they have another lockout, it's going to be all social media. That's all it's going to be.
Right.
And the players also have a responsibility.
The last question is, how do you think, just quickly, what do you think is the future of sports reporting in social media? I mean, in the way social media has developed in the last couple of years.
Well, I think the way it's developed just in the last 2 years even, people do live tweeting now at games. I know someone who works for The Score who has gone to some World Junior games. It's not NHL, but these are the stars going to the NHL. And he told me that he does live tweeting and live blogging during the game, and he develops his story that way. And I think you're going to see a lot more journalists or reporters or whoever is going to be covering the game. You're going to see a lot more of them doing it in game at the moment.
Right.
And it'll be updated right to the site or right to the feed. And you're going to see a lot more of that, because people sometimes can't be in front of a television. That's the beauty of social media. People are in front of their computer more than television these days, And they're like, I use Twitter all the time, so people are in front of Twitter. If you're getting live tweeting updates at the Leaf game when you can't be at the Leaf game, that's perfect. News mediums, they want that. Why? Because when they click that link on the tweet that says whoever just scored a goal, they go right to the site and they have all the ads, and those advertisers pay.
And again, excellent points, because there's this thing that they call the second screen experience. They're developing it now in terms of, okay, when you watch television, when you watch a sports event, you just don't focus on the sports event now. You look at a second screen, you look at your phone, you look at your tablets, your laptops,
you got your tablet on the left hand, you got your phone on the right hand.
Right.
One has scores on it.
Exactly.
And who do you think's putting these scores up?
Yeah.
These are the people covering the games.
Exactly. Yeah.
They're putting the scores on these apps,
right.
on the iPads and stuff like that. They're the ones putting the information in.
That's where you go back again to what we were discussing a while ago about the fan-athlete relationship. It gets enhanced because of all these apps, because of all these new media, and then again branding. I mean, if you see a celebrity trending on Twitter, you're not just watching him on TV. You're seeing people making comments about this guy. So,
and again, with what happened to Tim Thomas, he was trending on Twitter for weeks for what happened. And you know what? You know how I found out? Twitter. I went to Twitter, I clicked Tim Thomas's name, and then all the information came up. And that's what reporters are doing. They're getting the information, they're putting it on Twitter, and the fans now are using the media as an interaction,
Right.
a way to interact with the players. You know, whether it's negative or positive.
And on that note, that's a perfect way to end this segment right here. Again, thank you very much, Mr. Justin
Thank you.
Smith. We will come back with two more panelists
And we are
after these
back
messages. To our second interviewee. Her name is Brittany, huge NFL fan. The first question, we'll go straight ahead. We'll go straight right to the question, the topic. How do you think has Twitter and Facebook affected the way, particularly the NFL and the athlete-fan relationship?
It affects it hugely. When people go on Twitter, they expect just to talk to their celebrity. You know, ask them questions about how's the game's going, what they're doing, or how the weather is where they are. They expect to know everything that they're doing.
Right.
They do it because they love them. They want to know everything about them. If you're in person, like for example, as myself, being a huge NFL fan, we want to know everything. Even if we ask them a question on Twitter or on Facebook, or we want to like know everything about them, Facebook, you know their information. They put down what they like, what TV shows. They can click on little links, and you can find out everything about them.
Yeah.
But when you're in person, it's totally different.
Right.
You don't know what to say when you're in person. When you're behind a computer and on these social media sites, you can ask anything you want, and it's like like they're your buds, and you just want to get to know them more.
Yeah. But there's an ugly side to social media and professional
Of
sports.
course.
The one recent example that I can think of is Matt Idea.
Yes.
And what happened to that? I mean, just a summary of what happened. He has this supposedly hoax girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out that it was of course, it was an imposter. It was this quote unquote girlfriend was actually somebody who snatched a photo of a woman from Facebook, and then he presented himself as a woman who was interested in Mantideo.
Of
So,
course.
so now the question is, what do you think? What can you say about this incident in terms of the dangers or the threats of social media and sports?
I can say that it's what you say is permanent. You put it out there, and it's going to stick out there to the public. What he did was very sad that he had to go and just create a hoax like that to just get attention. He put this poor innocent fan or girl in danger, in jeopardy of her job, her friends, her family, her personal life, even her work life. He sacrificed himself to put her life in danger. When I was actually watching Dr. Phil, because it was on there the other day, I found out lost information because I didn't really understand why he did it, but when he explained it, he just did it to get attention, to get more ratings, to build his self-esteem, just because he didn't have a girlfriend at the time. Well, he put everything at risk. He put his social capital at risk. He put his family, his personal life at risk, and it just wasn't fair. It wasn't fair to the fans. It wasn't fair to his teammates, and it just built a lot of stress and a lot of, drama that didn't really need to be. He was just, went on Twitter and decided to tweet himself very graphic and inappropriate tweets that built to things that weren't true.
Do you think because the fallout of this is that, there are athletes like Tiger Woods, like Lance Armstrong, and then recently Oscar Pistorius. These guys, their fall from grace, the negative impression that they've made after doing or after encountering such a scandal, it just, it went up in smoke, just like that. You think, how do you think social media does that in terms of it helping to to down an athlete's career?
Well, social media, it affects everything. I mean, like I said before, everything that you put out in the social media or social networking stays there permanently. It's public, everyone can see it, and you can't take it back. You can't retract the statement. Now, social media taking what he did and building it to make it seem worse, it took a lot of fans to realize that they turned on him. Like, it just made everything worse. He didn't have any fans. Everyone just thought he was, a bad apple.
Right.
But when he explained why he did it, it just made it 10 times worse. Social media blew it out into a negative matter, which they didn't even have to.
So what do you think is the future of the fan-athlete relationship in terms of the social media?
The future, I think it'll be the same. I mean, it wouldn't be exactly the same as it was back in the past, but now that we're in, somewhat the future, in 7 years from now, we can use social media and build on how we talk to an athlete. Say we're huge fans, we want to meet them in person. There is this network or service that you can go to, and they can help you build, if you want an athlete for, let's say, a charity.
Right.
They can call the athlete and just be like, we need you for this charity, please come out. And fans will go see him, or, the athlete. And it would build the fans' social networking to what questions they want to ask him. They can ask him anything online, but in person, they freak out because they're like, oh my God, he's right in front of me. What do I say?
Okay. It's easy to take the perspective of a fan, but do you think if you're an athlete, do you think it'll be easy for you to communicate with fans, people who you don't see? Do you think that would be easy for you?
For an athlete's point of view, I think it would be the same. They wouldn't know what to say. They'll be a little nervous, but hey, how you doing, kind of thing. But they'll treat you like you're a natural person, but they'll also have an ego because they are an athlete. They have so much social capital. They have so many fans.
Right.
They're just going to act the way they do. But as a fan perspective, we're really eager to know their everyday move.
Correct.
We're really eager to meet them in person, get a photograph of it or their autograph, and put it on our wall and be like, I met them in person.
Right.
And then when they go back online, they'll be like, hey, what's up, kind of thing, all relaxed, but not really all hyped up.
Correct. Okay. And on that note, thank you very much, Brittany.
You're welcome.
On that note, we will move on to our third and last panelist, Clayton, in a few minutes. We'll be back. Our third and last panelist for the day is Mr. Clayton Theriot. He is our baseball expert, Major League Baseball expert. Good evening, Mr. Theriot. Okay, so the first question basically is, what do you think is the relationship of the fan and athletes in Major League Baseball in terms of social media?
I think the biggest example I can think of is the MLB Fan Cave, which started in 2011, and basically what they do is MLB Network. They have about 10 or 20,000 applicants every year, and they do interviews, they do written things, and they do videos, and they submit that. And out of those 10 to 20,000 people, they select 2 people to spend their time in the fan cave during the whole year.
Wow.
And basically it's like a challenge, right?
Mm.
And the challenge is to watch as many baseball games as possible, and the ultimate goal is to watch every single game that goes on, and athletes come in and famous people come in, and it's a pretty well-known thing. It's huge on Twitter,
Right.
and I think on Facebook they have 1 million likes.
So how much do you think is social media boosting Major League Baseball's profile by doing this?
I think it's huge because they proved last year, Bronson Arroyo, a pitcher for the Cincinnati Reds, and one of the Fan Cave people did a video, and they sang with the guitar and everything, and it went viral, and there was a report in October that showed that social networking is actually boosting the ratings.
All right.
of Major League Baseball. So I think it's huge.
Okay,
I
but
think it's
all-
very important.
Obviously, social media is a double-edged sword. You have the advantages and the disadvantages. What do you think is what are the disadvantages of social media? And cite an example.
Well, the negatives are if you say something bad, it goes out to millions of people, and it's permanent, right? You
Yeah,
can't, even
right.
if you take it down, it's already been said,
Yeah.
and there's proof that people have said it. The ultimate example is Yunel Escobar, and he had Spanish written under his eyes, and it translated to "you are a faggot," and it was like a slur to the other team. And the media originally talked about it and said it maybe was taken out of context, but as soon as it hit Twitter, that's when it was huge. Everybody hated him. They wanted him out of Toronto, and ultimately it led to his trade.
Right, right. And I think
With the
another thing that I can recall about Major League Baseball is this landmark lawsuit involving Tony La Russa that happened in June 2006, and he sued Facebook. He sued Twitter because an imposter was using his name to tweet disparaging messages, and then what he did was he sued Twitter. And what Twitter did was, okay, this is bad for us. This is bad publicity. So what they did was create the verification program. So that the thing that we see on authentic athletes, on the real personalities, there's that little like check, right? With
Verified.
Yeah, it's verified. So that was an offshoot of the Tony La Russa case, actually. And what do you think is? I mean, if you're a fan, right, of a lot of sports, right? How do you think is the trust between fan and athlete right now, from a fan's perspective?
I think it really depends on the fan, but really I think the trust is big because, like you said, the verified thing, right? I mean, that shows that they're real, but the negative I can think of is Facebook. You can't tell if it's real or not.
Right.
Facebook doesn't have the verified, and there was the guy who worked for MLB who wasn't supposed to have access, but he posted a whole bunch of inappropriate things, and the racial slurs, discrimination against disabled people, and everything, and it blew up, and he wasn't supposed to have access, so it's not like they could have fired him because he hacked them basically, right? So
Right.
I think that may have diminished the trust a little bit, but I think Twitter is the major one. I mean, the verified thing is big. I
Okay.
think that ultimately,
As a fan, how important is it to be involved in social media? Like, you're a fan of the Leafs, you're a fan of the Jays. If there were no social media now, what do you think is the experience like?
experience is awesome. I mean, I went,
No, I mean, if there was no,
if there was no,
Social
well,
media.
I don't think it would be as good. I don't think the fans would be as engaged. I don't think the ratings would be as high. I think it would just wouldn't be good if it went away.
okay. And then you talk about the double-edged sword. You talk about the negative effects. You've got Oscar Pistorius is one example. Just recently, where did you hear the story about him and the charges that are being laid on him in murdering his girlfriend?
Facebook, there are about 5 or 6 stories when I first signed on that showed it, and
Right.
it was overwhelming. I mean, it went from Facebook to national
So you
post to
yeah. So
Twitter.
you saw the news not on mainstream media, but on social media, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then, how do you think is the way the way sports reporting? How do you think will that change 7 years down the line in terms of sports reporting?
I think it's all probably going to be online. I don't think we're going to have print journalism anymore. I think it's all going to be blogs and Twitter and everything, and you click a link and it ultimately goes to the story. I don't think it's ever going to be in print. I think print's going downhill. I think the only way I get my news is Twitter and Facebook, really,
Right. Right.
and Google News, which is another big one.
Okay. How about the future of fan-athlete relationships? 7 years from now, maybe 2020. I mean, how drastic will the landscape be?
I don't think it'll be too big, but I think ultimately if the major league sports are going to be successful, I think it's going to be because of Twitter and all the other social media sites, because like Justin said in the other interview, you have your phone in one hand and your tablet in the other, and depending on what apps you have, you can listen to the game, you can watch the game, you can get live updates. So if somebody scores, they'll post a video right away, and you can click it. You don't even have to be watching the game, and you can get up to the minute stats.
Okay, I'm gonna tell you a story, just a quick one, and then there are three perspectives to this. Okay, it's a different sport. Kevin Durant, he's a player for the Oklahoma City Thunder. What he did was somebody tweeted him and asked him if he could play for their flag football league. What Durant did, surprisingly, was he responded to this tweet, and he actually went to that game and played with them. So, from my perspective, I think in the future, 7 years down the line, we are going to see athletes, not just like ordinary like athletes or run-of-the-mill athletes. We're talking about all-stars. We're talking about MVPs actually reaching out to fans this way. From a fan's perspective first, is this good or bad?
I think ultimately it's good. The only bad thing I can take from it is he could get injured doing that.
Right.
But it's good because ultimately his reputation goes up,
Correct.
right? And it gives him more fans for one, and it just even could get viewers for Oklahoma City Thunder and even NBA.
Right.
Maybe they start watching NBA. Maybe more people start watching it because of that.
And as a player, as the celebrity, the sports celebrity, how will you take this? I mean, somebody tweets you, or on Facebook, somebody invites you to their event. How do you think social media will? I mean, what are your thoughts on that? If you're the one who's gonna get.
I think
these
if I were an athlete, it would be great. It shows that people are interested in me and they want to see more from me than just playing pro sports.
Right.
I think it's great. I think, charities could invite them, and it just, I don't know, it just makes the reputation bigger. Again, I think it would be great if you were a player.
Last question. How do you think will social media improve in terms of helping celebrities' reputation overall? Sports celebrities' reputation.
I think it'd be good, depending, as long as it's a positive thing, as long as they don't tweet anything negative, I think the possibilities are endless, really. I mean, ratings will go up again, and reputations will get bigger, and I think it'll get more fans ultimately.
Okay, if you're a fan, what's your advice to other fans out there who want to connect to their idols, sports idols, through social media?
I say if you haven't already done it, join Twitter and follow them and like all their Facebook pages and take a shot in the dark. Try to tweet at them and maybe they'll reply. Kevin Durant replied to that fan, so maybe they'll reply to you. Ultimately, if you're a fan of them, I say follow them. I say go for it.
For athletes, what's your advice to them?
I say keep it clean and keep it positive and just try to communicate with the fans as much as possible, because ultimately it'll do wonders for you. Your reputation will go up and you'll get more fans.
All right, cool. On that note, we end this topic with it. We end this day. Thank you very much, Clayton. Thank you very much, Justin and Brittany. We will see you in our next episode. Good day.